do it.
Thank you, Jeff. Yep.
Uh,
All right, yes, Jeff.
As a reminder, workshop is public for the board only.
Yep.
And not public for the public to speak.
Thank you. All right, doesn't look like we have anyone from the public anyways, but if in case.
There
in
is.
case you do. Hello. All right, it is 6:30. Good start. It's been a long time coming. Planning board, thanks for coming in. As I mentioned before we got started, I think we should focus on the solar ordinance first, just given that we do have a timeline for the solar farm ordinance because of the moratorium that's currently in place, so that we can meet public hearing deadlines and all that. Whereas with the other one, registered cannabis registered caregivers, we really don't have a moratorium or anything. It's just something we wanted to do. All right. I think how we normally work through these is we could just go page by page and people can offer up whatever they've got. So does that work for everybody? Cool. And I hope that it doesn't come to this, but if we're not done by like 8:50, I have to go and I have to leave you guys. But I think I'll be done by then.
Okay.
8:50.
Ready to get out earlier.
Yeah.
We better be done.
But I just put it out there. I would like to be done before that, but
You're in charge.
I know.
Make it happen.
this is true. Come on, guys. Okay, page 1, solar. What do we got? Questions or comments from anybody? I'm just gonna go page by page. Which actually, if I'm looking, does everybody have the written copy, a printed copy? Okay, because I think the electronic copy, just that you were probably at least looking at, I think that's like. So the pages are a little bit different. Okay, so we'll go based off of the printed copy. Okay. Is there any like just kind of context or anything that you guys would like to add on this one?
I'll just say that it was a difficult task in that we wanted to balance the needs of having solar, because we all think that's great clean energy with the needs of the town. It was really problematic about where these should be sited. I like hayfields, some people like forest. You know, nobody wants to see anything sort of out of commission. So in the end, since we have an industrial zone, that's where we put them. And everything else is really about some technicalities, but also I think screening, visuals, setbacks and also decommissioning. But there's nothing really shocking in here, I think. The one thing we struggled over was whether there was a size limit. And also the fact that, and this is did you bring this up? That community solar farms have the same impact, but look the same. And that was the issue, but we also didn't want to discourage like 3 neighbors who might have common property to get together, put together a community solar farm. So we allowed something for that in terms of size. Is that how we did it? I guess how we did it. It's all a dim memory now.
But in
Yeah, I think the 1 acre.
Yeah,
Give it three local members.
yeah, something like
like
that.
if it's like it's let me organize my thought. Because in table A, and I'm jumping to the absolute but left page, sorry here. You're proposing just I1 and I2, but that's because of the size limitation. It has to be a minimum. So like people, like to your point, somewhere, if somebody wanted to go together with their neighbor, get a few panels, they still can.
I think that was our intention. I'm trying to remember if that's how we worked it out.
Basically 1 acre or more of land that's gonna be cleared goes to the I-1, I-2. Anything less than that can be done
Okay,
anywhere.
okay,
Right.
cool.
And it certainly doesn't disallow for, like us as a resident having one in our house, even if it's like on the ground, I think. So
Yeah.
for home use, that's all allowed.
Okay.
This was only what we would call solar farms, large,
Big, large scale.
20 acre, yeah.
Anything else? Any other color context or anything?
On page 1.
Yeah, go ahead. Well, I was just kind of getting broader, like kind of story stuff, but if there is anything else we can dig into page 1.
Yeah, I just have a question on the setback section. it says, these vegetative areas shall be maintained by the solar farm operators and developers. Do we have a penalty if they are not? Like, what happens if they don't maintain these areas, whether inside the full solar farm area or around like the outside fence?
Good question.
They're gonna
We did
capture
have a-
that. Go ahead.
No, go
Greg.
ahead, Jen.
Nope.
So I thought we did address that in here. I know we had, I know we had a
I think
conversation. about
It's as if anything that, any part of the code that isn't,
Site, would that be considered site maintenance?
there aren't specific penalties if you don't follow the code in specific. There are general,
So the planning board can capture that in their findings of fact. So any solar farm that's large in size will come in front of the planning board and members of the planning board will be able to capture that in their findings of facts and their conditions. And that would be one of the conditions of approval. It's something that the code enforcement officer in the town would take care of and make sure it was well maintained. So that's what it is.
So I guess my question was, would they be looking at a fine? Would they be, I mean, obviously first
It
the
would
approach.
follow the same protocol as any violation. They get
Okay.
a letter for 14 days, a second letter for 14 days, then it would go to our legal team.
Okay, perfect.
So. Yeah, so, help bring up to speed. So we don't give fines in the town, we have what we call penalties.
Okay,
Courts are only the ones who can, judges and courts give fines. We have penalties. It's a standard penalty based on. Standard penalty based on. Code enforcement instruction. You want to kind of say what that is, tell her what that is.
So are you talking the cost?
Yeah,
The penalties are $100 to $5,000 per day per violation.
so what we do is we send them the letters and then eventually we would, once she sends the notification of the permit violation, the clock starts ticking. We don't make the decision. Eventually, we would take them to court and say, okay, they didn't take care of the vegetation. Here's what the penalty could be, and the judge can order based on what she just, usually what our legal team will run.
okay,
That's how it works.
perfect.
Anything else on page 1?
We dropped 500 to 100 and 200. Still a lot.
you mean it's too much setback. Yeah, I don't,
100-foot buffer of trees. It's a lot of buffer.
well, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, we had that discussion, that's why in the I-1, we went back to 100, which we thought was reasonable given the impact of some of these things. We did have some debate because I-2 does abut some residential areas that were, at least where it abuts that, there should be a larger setback. I think the planning board frankly could have gone either way on that one, in my view, whether it was 100 or 200, it was kind of a last minute add-on that was pushed by a member that gained some traction, we put it in. Our feelings wouldn't be hurt if you dropped that to 100.
Also, it's assuming to some extent that you're clear cutting an area within your 20-acre lot and plopping it in the middle like they're doing on Junction Road, which, is easy and makes sense because you're just leaving forest that's already there. But I don't know what happens if you're in an open field then, if you're supposed to plant an entire forest. I mean, we have some description about native planting and, and screening, right, that,
Right, so that's.
right, so how do you actually then fulfill a 100-foot buffer if you have to plant a whole?
If you put it in the middle of Hilton's Field, how would you do a 100-foot buffer to the houses and around the road? I guess that's my question. I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem with either one. I'd like to see it the same just because it's easier. Or read, if it's all 100, it's all 100, if it's all 200, it's 200. But either way, but what do you do if they put it?
So there's the setback and then there's the buffer, two different things. So the buffer is the answer to page 2.
Yep.
And so that attempts to get at it, that again. There would have to be some element of screening in front of it. We would not anticipate or expect that. The 200 feet in front of it would be
But
all
this-
replanted.
But Greg, the setback also says right here, uncut, undisturbed vegetation setback. By continuous landscape planting along the exterior lot lines. If we're mixing and matching, we should,
So
if we should just put the setback in and move anything around, what should be the buffer in one place?
Just a general question, so we're saying minimum lot area of 20 acres and included in that 20 acres is this. Space for the setback
Yep.
and the buffer.
Yep.
Okay, I remember, and John, you might remember. Jack was talking about, and this might have been back when you guys had, I think, what did you start with? 500 feet, 1,000 feet or something, you had like a
Yeah, and
really
also
big
if
number,
you, if you take away that much, then your acreage.
is like,
Yeah, you wouldn't have enough acreage to put in 5 kilowatts.
yeah,
So with 100 to 200 foot buffer, you'll have enough for
Okay.
500 kilowatt. Yeah, it
Okay.
was way too much with 1,000 feet.
yeah. Okay,
Right, so now they're not doing 5 kilowatts, they dropped it to 3, I think, right, or 3. Megawatts,
Sorry.
that's right.
A house would do about 5 kilowatts. on a
Yeah.
roof.
Yeah, that's true.
That's
That's
the
familiar.
scale.
Back in generator.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think consistency is good, and I think 100 feet is plenty, and if you want to change it, I think that's a great idea.
okay, do we have consensus to put both I1 and I2 at 100 feet?
Yep.
Okay. That's first change, good job, guys. And then Hershey and Greg, what are you guys talking about like getting the buffering in the setback section to sync up more, is that what you're talking?
Yeah, so now as we sit here and look at the setback versus the buffering. You know, again, if you're bringing in, farmland, it does say to the greatest extent practical. So if you look on page 1, item 4, the purpose of this minimum standard is to provide buffering to the greatest extent practical. I think there is a leeway, frankly, that I see. If you want to clarify that, we can simply add, due consideration could be given to open space or farmland, which is fine with me. That clarifies.
That'd be perfect. It clarifies
Yeah,
it. and
that
cleans it up.
clarifies,
Yep.
So I would say to the greatest extent practical, and you can such as open farmland.
Not that I'd like to see open farmland converted to solar panels, but it's happening a lot up north.
So Greg, where, sorry, I got lost, what section are you
Page
proposing?
1.
Yep,
Item
number 4.
4.
Yep.
It says the purpose of this minimum standard is to provide buffering
Okay,
to the greatest extent practical.
Yep.
I think I said such as open farmland. I gotta figure out. the
Just
word.
make sure we don't contradict 6.
Right, well, I gotta go read it now.
Yeah.
But I think what we're saying is we don't expect them to replant 200 feet or 100 feet of vegetation, really just the buffer.
Could you say to include open farmland? To the greatest extent practical and to include open farmland to provide a visual buffer of the solar town. From running global, so you just add the line to include open farmland.
That way it's on open farmland. That's in consideration of what we're.
Right,
Yeah, they just have to go up to the 6-foot conifers.
so Greg, the sentence.
Yeah,
reads-
I got it.
Yeah,
Can I actually suggest that we just leave this with the setback and then move all of the
The buffering.
information to the buffering section so that way we won't get in trouble contradicting ourselves in 2 different spots.
yeah, that's a good suggestion.
Can you
Keep it
capture
clean.
Capture language, right?
She's fantastic.
Thank you.
I got my multicolored pen.
Wow, that is so special.
She has a link.
You stealing them from the shipyard? Yeah.
When the wind, and we can only use blue. I mean, excuse me, black. We can't use.
Really?
Yeah.
So are you saying to just scratch that line?
I would actually I would just say setbacks shall be 100 feet from property line, blah, 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 and leave it at that. And then I would say see section 6 for details regarding buffering and call it a day, and then move any details around, because in this one, it says a 6-foot height evergreen plantings. On the next page, it says 2 rows of evergreen plantings with different, 6 foot, blah, 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 and those just need to be brought into.
So we're essentially talking about
Same
in
thing.
section 4, striking the sentence, the purpose of this minimum standard, that whole sentence, get rid of it. Because we're gonna talk about buffers in section 6. Is that fair? Yeah. But the last one, vegetative areas shall be maintained by full. Well, no, I guess that should be addressed in the buffer section 2.
I actually would just say, the setback should say blah, 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 100 feet, period. And then the next one, and then move everything else over and then edit it, so it says something to the effect of. Should there be, all effort should be made to leave, vegetation uncut and undisturbed within the setback by blah, 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 blah.
I think we should
I think we should do it.
clarify in both sections as I sit here and read it. In section 4 in the setback, that's a critical function, the setback. It's a critical piece of the ordinance.
Yeah.
I would just simply have at the bottom a sentence, something, let me just think about here, special consideration will be given
Details given in. second.
when, open land is being considered. What can we do there, Jenny?
I'm trying to think of how you would word that, like appropriately.
Well, since you have to screen, so you do have to, you'd have to, if it's open,
Right, but-
we ask on the buffering section that you all direct views will be screened by 2 offset rows of evergreen plantings. With these with 6-foot private.
So- What do we say in the setback? For open farmland?
So are you bringing that sentence back?
Yeah, I'm just, because again, the setback and what we have defined in there is critical to
Right.
the overall ordinance. So if you just eliminate everything and say 100 or 200. It
Well, it's
doesn't
not,
give
it
any
would
other
just-
guidelines.
It just moves it, that's all to the buffering section.
Well, how about we just say for open farmland referred to buffering
Okay.
section?
Okay. That's fine.
Because if you go eliminating all of that,
Well, I don't want to
That's
eliminate
critical
it, I just want to move it. I just feel like it will be confusing if there's one section that talks about it here and then another section that talks about it. And I'm not convinced that if we don't put them in the same section, it won't be contradictions or edited differently or,
but a setback is not a buffer.
yeah.
Because it's setback plus buffer,
Mhm.
then panels.
Okay, I mean, I don't. You're sorry about it, I don't.
So is the question, all 100 feet and I1 and I2 by continuous landscaping and plantings along exterior lot lines. Hershey, you're sort of saying that continuous landscaping of plantings along the exterior lot lines is the buffer.
Well, it says it's surrounding outside the required security fencing. But if you go to the next page, that also discusses the buffer, which is outside the security fencing.
So we're essentially proposing that what this lot would look like is fence, buffer, setback, panels.
Oh, sorry, I thought you started the inside. Start
Like from the outside to the end, what would it be?
Setback is the whole, so setback is from the front of the property back, that's 100 feet.
Mhm.
And that's when the fence begins, the
So setback,
planting begins,
fence,
the panels.
Buffer, panels,
Mhm.
okay,
Oh, the buffer's within the fence? Not without, on the outside of the fence,
oh,
Buffers on the outside.
Outside,
right?
but I'm saying that the setback starts from the front of the property line.
Right,
yeah,
back.
From the property line to the fence is the setback.
Mhm.
Within that, if it's forested, I would assume they would leave it undisturbed. And that counts as buffer. They don't need to then plant anything else. I would assume if it were farmland or open or not forested enough, they would have to plant what we called for direct views will be screened by 2 offset rows of evergreen planting. Which, will be arborvitae and die in about a year or two. Just
Feed
somehow-
the deer for a while. Deer
Excellent,
love
excellent deer food.
Well, item 4 does address that they have to be maintained by the operator, just for those that are
No, that's-
concerned with that, so.
Greg, I would
Yeah.
tend to agree, I think, with what was just said, and I think also what Hershey's alluding to, and I'm just gonna restate it. What we're saying is that there is a setback, whatever vegetation is there remains to the degree possible. If it's disturbed, it gets I think, will be replaced with a minimum. That we might keep, but the buffer per se, that there is a buffer at or in front of the fence line, then the fence lines and the solar panels. That means your fence isn't gonna go around the whole exterior of a 20-acre property, because be quite expensive, I think that would.
Yeah, it's just gonna go around it's just
The
gonna go around
panels.
the solar field.
The solar
That's it.
field, they're gonna have to address shade, they're gonna make some space, so whatever growing up on those 6 feet is not gonna.
Or in the 100-foot buffer.
And the 100-foot
I don't
buffer
think
is
it's-
also part
So
of
when you
it.
go into a solar field, and we've been into them before, you go in, you drive in, and usually it's set back, whatever the zone is,
Yeah.
whatever you choose, and then it's buffered with a couple of rows of, you know, those trees or whatever you plant. And then it's a fence, and then it's actually a cart road all the way around, so it's like a dirt cart
Yeah,
road,
yeah.
and then the panels start.
Okay,
And the switch to shut off the power to it is usually on the outside of the fence.
Mm.
And it's protected with a box, they have gloves in there for safety. That's usually what it looks like.
Yeah.
So just for,
yeah.
you know,
All right, well, let's
Fantastic.
move on.
it does.
Okay.
From a visual.
Is-
I'm
Are
just
we-
trying, I'm just looking at this, trying to come up with a word to put in there, that's all.
Are we clear on what changes are being made?
No,
Yeah, I don't think we can.
Greg,
yeah,
so let me throw the sentence that says on section 4, the sentence, and I think this goes with what Hershey's saying, I hear what Hershey. The purpose of this minimum standard is to provide buffering. So you start talking about buffering in a setback standard. I think that sentence, the purpose of this minimum standard, if you want to leave that in there, take out the word buffering, is to provide greatest extent practical. Or if not, that whole, that sentence, the purpose of this minimum standard, that's talking about buffering, that
I think that
belongs
should
over
go
number
away,
6, that
yeah.
doesn't belong in number 4. That, I see what Hershey's saying, the rest of them, number 4, I think stands, but that sentence, the purpose of the minimum standard is to provide buffering, you're addressing buffering in number 6. So that sentence doesn't really need to be there.
So let's move back to number 6.
Does that make sense?
And let's add a little note about open farmland.
and that's, I think,
Okay,
so I'm reading the very first sentence. Blah, 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 100 feet in the I1 and 100 feet in the I2, I2 zoning district, uncut, undisturbed vegetation, except for open farmland.
okay,
Quick and
Leave
easy.
the rest.
Yeah,
Yeah.
keep everything else there.
all right. That's fine.
Okay,
So the only changes being made to number 4 is the 100 remains the same, and the 200 goes to 100.
Yep.
And then on the third line, uncut / undisturbed vegetation, comma, except for open farmland.
setback by continuous landscaping,
Yeah, it needs to be fit in there.
yeah. And then everything else remains, or are we still striking that, the purpose of this minimum standard?
That whole thing
That
can
needs to
go
go to
over
six,
as number 6, yeah.
If the exterior lot line vegetation is disturbed, it will be replaced. That I think pertains to the setback. Oh, no, except it says evergreen plantings.
I don't think you need to change anything.
I agree, just striking out that sentence, adding that open farmland. Because except open farmland.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. We good?
No, I'm good on that.
Yeah.
Question I have, so number 2, minimum lot area, solar farm shall be situated on lots, minimum 20 acres. The question I had, can we put more than one on a lot? If they can fit, if there are a couple that they can. Do we need to outline that we don't?
I don't think you can get more, I mean, again, they dropped it to 3. But I don't think you can get more than 1 5 megawatt or,
Yeah,
on a 20-acre parcel. When you do the setbacks and everything else, you're closing in on a 20-acre parcel plus the size of the panels.
Right, the point I'm making is that in the area that we're talking about, there are 1, 2, 3, 6. That are over 30 acres. So
But I think
30,
that-
okay.
I
can
think
understand.
Jeff, the catch is the maximum power, because we're maxing it out at 5 megawatts, and I think
3, now
5 what?
it's 3, they
Oh, it's-
changed it to 3.
Oh,
See,
We were-
they put it on 3 different lots adjacent to each other.
Right.
No, I mean, could I go, if I owned the 100-acre lot that's out there? Could I say Minahan LLC is a 5 megawatt or 3 megawatt and on the same exact lot.
No, you'd have to break it off into separate
to break it.
LLCs, what I would think. I couldn't see how
You
you
have to sort
put
of-
three
You have to
separate
condoize it.
condominiumizer.
It'd be like subdivision, because you
Just
can't,
didn't know if we need to think about that, that's all.
no, though the idea of
Not
like
bad.
cobbling together 20 acres from different parcels, but I think we've said you have to have one. Right, one parcel, you can't.
Yeah, we stopped the idea of 4 people getting together that all had 5 acres and making one. I do believe that was the intent to have,
Well, it says on a minimum of 20 acres, but we should say on a minimum lot of 20 acres, right? Because a minimum of 20 acres just means you could have 5 different lots, but we want it to be one lot. Not, right? So I guess, I don't know, if you want to buy.
Well,
Yeah,
it's
well,
a-
yeah,
shall we
so what if-
situate on lots
Yeah,
of minimum?
what if somebody wanted to buy 5 lots,
Yeah.
We're connected.
Yeah, I don't care,
per se,
that's okay.
then they'd have 1 lot.
So how this ordinance reads right now, if somebody wanted to buy like 120-acre parcel. And they wanted to split it up by 20-acre lots, as long as they could meet the setbacks of 100 feet,
Yeah,
our planning board would have to grant them that. So he's not wrong about what he's trying to say here. So we do need to fix that wording a little bit, just to make it more cut and dry, I think.
What do you suggest, Jenny, to address that?
So we need to take that sentence out and just fix it, so.
Which
Right,
one?
how do you want to reword this? So solar farms shall be situated on lots a minimum of 20 acres, but we want to make sure that they can't subdivide the lots and split them up.
Want to have it on a single lot of record,
But, so I could go to the town hall. and I could do that, though.
non-subdividable.
You could take that 120 acres and make 6
Right,
lots.
as long as you can meet the setbacks.
Is
We need
that,
to take that sentence, we need to like beef it up just a little bit, make it a little bit more.
can we dictate that all of the 6 available will remain in that size? Can we restrict those lots not be subdivided? Or is that simply a matter that
So
you
the
could
only,
do that?
so the only way to really do it. and
We
I'm
want
not
to-
sure-
You'd have to extend the setback if you're doing multiple ones, and that would,
Mhm.
if you're
Or-
looking to say
Crush it.
no, you'd have to make it untenable.
Yep, or you could do something, I don't know how anyone feels about this, just throwing it out there. Or you could do something where you have to have so many feet between, just like the cannabis,
Mhm.
you know, you
Right.
could say,
Mm.
you know, yes, you can have a solar farm here. And then you can't have another one for 500 feet or 1,000 feet or whatever,
Or
and then they
several
would be able
acres
to do
even.
that. Yep, or acres, yep.
Right,
And I didn't want to cause a problem, I just wanted to make sure
No.
we're thinking about it ahead of
very
That's why it's
tricky,
weird.
very tricky.
Yeah,
So it sounds like the best way to sort of accomplish what I think we're all on the same page about is that separation between solar farms.
that would be the cleanest way, I think.
So solar farms on one lot. Must have blank
No,
between
it's
them.
not one lot, because if you take 100 acres and subdivide it
You
out.
can't have contiguous property lines.
Yeah, the issue
of
gonna be,
solar
if I take my 100
No, no, I
acres and
gotcha.
do this. You know, you want to have a distance between solar
Right.
farms.
So like,
If
we
you do-
basically,
If you do like a 500 feet,
Can we not allow people to subdivide their land in order to put in multiple?
I don't think you can do that.
You
and
can't
just
have
say no.
hesitation.
Yeah, I don't
Okay.
think you can do that. That would be easy, but. you can't do it.
Can't do that.
Yeah, I'm not gonna go down that road, because if I have 100 acres, I own it, I want to do what I want.
Right.
That's right.
so
In all
And
honesty.
while you're at it, make sure you come hunting on my property, because you know you can.
I will, I will, as long as it's not
You
posted.
get the
Say,
whole
like-
deer.
a solar, something about like
I'll come tonight.
contiguous 20 acres, like one farm must be on one. Connected chunk of 20 acres and must be X number of feet.
Not feet, let's make it acres.
Well, yeah, whatever, X,
Yes.
insert metric here that we have to talk about
and then-
between one solar farm and another.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep, so
Wow, they could get
you need
it.
to put that into a clean
Neighbor this
sentence,
way.
you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So you could say something
Square
like,
acre. Each solar farm must not abut another solar farm within 500 feet. from the
I would say almost like piggyback on what kind of, you know, Hershey's kind of saying and just say like, solar farm must not abut another for 20 acres, you know what I mean? Or
But
something
you're gonna have a
like
long
that.
skinny 20 acres,
But
right?
that's what I'm saying,
Uh-huh.
though, like you, if you're gonna do it acreage, you have to be careful about how you play that. Cause at least with 500 feet, 1,000 feet, it's GIS, it's straight lines.
That might not be
What I would suggest right
Yeah.
now, because it's gonna go to Phil anyway, is number 2, change the title. Minimum lot area and separation between solar farms. Solar farms shall be situated on lots of minimum of 20 acres. And
separated by at least.
Separated by a minimum of, I'm gonna, 500 feet. I don't know.
So wait,
I
Jenny,
think
were
I
you
think
saying,
we
do you
need
think we should go the
80 acres.
acre route or we should go the feet route?
So first she said acres,
Uh-huh.
and if we want to do that, that's okay, but you have to be careful of how you do that.
Well,
Yeah.
let's make it 5,000 feet then. If it's gonna be perpendicular from a property line, right,
Yeah.
then let's just make it some egregious number that keeps.
So that would also stop, which is good. If I own 20 acres and Greg owned 20 acres or 25, we couldn't put them next to each other because we'd get out of this because they'd be 2 separate lots. But if we put it in here that you can't have it that close to another solar farm, that takes that equation out also.
Yeah, and an actual acre is 43,560 feet, but in South Berwick, it goes by the 40,000 square feet acre.
Hmm.
So just keep that in mind when you put acreage on a piece of paper like that. Weird.
Madam Chairwoman, if I may.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Chris. Again, to what I think it was John was saying, my concern was that the ability to circumvent this ordinance, I saw the loopholes there. And one of the ways that you could circumvent it, obviously, is about ownership. I could own a parcel and break it into different LLCs to get around this. I think the language needs to be very careful about who owns these contiguous parcels. Because it would be fairly easy to just create a bunch of LLCs and cobble together a bunch of land.
That's why
See what I'm saying?
But-
Like,
Yes.
it's the same as what he was just saying about, oh, I'm gonna take my parcel and a friend of mine has a parcel and we'll get together. There's gotta be a way to talk about the specific ownership of the parcels, not just the size of the parcels.
I'm not sure we can
But I
do
don't think,
that.
but
We're not-
Jenny, it seems like
But
we
you
can't really.
can't do that,
I
so
can't talk
can't?
about,
do ownership, but GIS,
you can do, yeah, and I recommend that.
and that's what we should do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So do the 5,000
Right,
in any direction.
Yeah.
You specify any direction, 5,000 feet within any direction. Now we're there. We have a symmetrical line we can draw. And I don't care whether it's 5,000, 2,000, or 10 feet. You pick the number.
That's
Because
right.
it's much easier for Jenny.
Right.
Jenny, do you agree with that?
I agree. No, I agree.
Then a symmetrical line, if you say in any direction, you can't have the solar farm this feet within
I
the
say
middle.
5,000 puts you just about a mile, right, which is
Yeah.
5,280.
For sure.
And just remember, when you talk footage, it goes from property line to property line, not solar farm to solar farm.
Right.
So
So-
they still have to meet that, then they'll be still
100 foot, All the
5,000
rest of
feet
it,
apart and then 200 feet up beyond that.
that's a lot of land.
It's a lot of
So I
land.
think what we're saying is number 2, minimum lot area, separation between solar farms.
Mhm.
Add
Not owned by the same people.
The minimum of 20 acres and be separated by a minimum of 5,000 feet.
in any direction.
Yeah.
So Chris, I think I don't know if you had anything else to add, but I think that's our best approach to addressing the problem that I think we all agree we
that
want
would
to
keep
address.
anything from being contiguous. That would keep anything from being
Yeah.
contiguous.
Yes.
That's exactly what I was talking about.
Good
Thank
job,
you.
Chris. Thank
Okay. All right.
Cool, good stuff.
I think everything else is good.
Jeff, does that answer it?
So do we need to change the 5 to 3, Hershey?
Yeah. so that's just-
Yeah,
So
that
number
would make
3,
me.
where it says solar farms will be limited to a maximum, we'll change it to 3.
Wait.
It's number 3 on the page 1.
The
So
minimum
we
of
heard
3.
5,
Oh,
but is it 3?
that's the
It's
state.
been discussed.
we had heard
but-
it stepped down to 3 because we
Is
got,
this a state?
it's a CMP capacity issue.
Right.
But they can still do 5,
Yeah,
so
they
if something goes
They
offline,
upgrade.
they can still go to
This is
5.
getting to the
It's a maximum,
substation.
so that's fine, because you could put a maximum of 5 on it, it might
So you-
change.
Leave it.
Okay.
I mean, part of the problem is they really have room for one more, we're talking about one
Yeah,
more of these, but we have to plan because, you know,
They
If
upgrade.
somebody were.
yeah,
to-
somebody
So
might
just,
upgrade.
just for everybody, so we understand the situation, and I'm not gonna necessarily use the right words, but I think you follow what I'm saying. There's substation, CMP thing that's needed in order for somebody to build a solar farm that only has so much capacity in it. And right now, it's almost at capacity, which basically limits like the capacity that of solar farms that could even be built in Southburg unless somebody wanted to fork over a crap ton of
And,
money.
and also,
to Upgrade,
right,
yeah, upgrade.
6
stuff.
million, and
Yeah.
also there's, you're limited by, you have to be on a transmission line. I mean, we've so
There's a whole
limited
lot
this
of-
that,
yeah.
right, it's gonna be really, I think, difficult even to have another one.
But do you want to go from 5 to 3 because say something goes offline or one of the projects goes south, which happens all
No,
the
because I
time?
think our 20 acres accommodated with
I would
five,
say leave it.
yeah,
I'm gonna leave it
you're gonna
five.
build one, you may as well
Yeah.
build,
That's
you
fine.
know.
We're gonna
Maybe
leave
C&D
it,
will come up with that.
leave it at 5. Okay,
Okay.
okay.
No, we're done.
Any other page 1 stuff?
Oh, yeah. I need some help understanding. Cut slope. From what I understand,
Okay, sorry. Can we take an approach as we're bringing up feedback, what specific section you're talking about, just so we can all follow you?
5, shade management.
Okay,
and
thank you.
cut slope. I thought that cut slope was, I drew a picture, was basically a drawn in, you cut out a piece of the hill or whatever to make a slope.
No, that's when they take here's your buffer. Right, here's your trees. And then here's your fence and all your panels. The cut slope is saying they go and they cut off the top 50 feet, 60 feet of the tree. In order to get the sun.
Hmm,
So what we're saying is that cut slope, when they hack off the tops of the trees, you can do that. But that's not part of the setback. You can't go into the setback on that.
Setback has to stay full growth. what it
Setback,
is.
that's correct.
okay,
What we're saying is that cut slope. You can't. Do whatever you want, but that setback is
has to stay full.
uncut. That's why it is critical that it remain uncut. I got you. So it's when they go and they hack off the top of the tree. Okay.
Is that what you believe? When I Google it, that's not what I see. I see a drawing of a road. Of how they put a road in, and I want to be sure that it's clear. Because you're the expert on it, and does that make sense to you? As far as cut slope?
I wouldn't go as far as an expert to say. So only because we talked about it so much, like with the planning board, I agree with what Greg's saying.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that you have a different approach to it. You know what I mean? And a different
I've been struggling
understanding
with
of
this
it.
watching your meetings and I could not grasp it, and that's why I'm still just.
Get rid of the word cut slope, because you can
Yep.
say the shade management area.
Yep,
Because they
Get
weren't
rid
the
of cut
same,
slope.
that's why.
Yeah, that's fine.
It doesn't matter to me, as long as we
I think you can
understand.
just get rid of
Yeah,
cut
get rid of
slope
cut
and,
Yeah.
yeah,
Fine, cut slope,
okay.
eliminate it.
Good.
now Jeff, when you read that now without that word there, does it make better sense?
I guess so, yeah.
Yeah.
Management areas are prohibited within the required setback areas, which I think is what we're,
Yeah, that sentence is
that's the key.
the clarifying one.
Just cut right. Be done with that.
Okay. Shade management, we good? We're just gonna get rid of that, cut slope and parentheses. Okay. Buffering and visual mitigation, did we get everything down for this one from our conversation about number 4?
The question I had here was, do we need to put examples?
Is that common practice in an ordinance?
Never hurts. It's like the intent. You know, so that way when we're sitting here 10 years from now, figuring out what we were doing, an example doesn't hurt.
What do
That's
you,
why-
what do you have?
Dwarf spruce, hemlock, I don't know if they're the right choice, and I also don't know, like, I'm thinking about. On on that side of 236, I think that's I-1, I can't remember, but that's got some wetlands. Do the hemlocks and what we're recommending in our ordinances, will they survive the wet?
Well, also, down
And
below
then
it
they
says,
come and put in hemlocks and they, oh, it's great, and then they all die in
well,
2
they're,
years
they're all,
because it's.
they're all dying anyway,
Yeah.
because they're really.
Or approved equal might give it flexibility.
What's that?
There's native,
And you're talking about the buffering. There's dwarf spruce, hemlock, tuja, or approved equal.
and down below, there's a native species note.
Yeah, 5 is,
That leaves a little more open to whatever is native. as well.
which is what we did when we replaced the road, right? We put it with native shrubs and grass when we redid Pumpkin Town Road.
I think Jeff, to answer, I think having examples is an excellent idea. I think, it would be left to the competency of the landscape company that the solar farm would probably hire to do the installation of the landscape segments of this project. And if that landscape company doesn't know better that a hemlock's not gonna work in this area, or an arborvitae is not gonna work in this area, then what it's gonna come back onto is they're gonna fail on their maintenance portion and be in trouble by Jen. So
Okay.
I think giving examples is fine, but thujas are arborvitaes and probably are not a good idea. And you're right, hemlocks, they don't like wet feet, you know, and all that fun stuff. So I think providing examples gives a better indication of what an evergreen is. And then it, like I said, it would just go back on the competency of the person that actually does the installation.
I just didn't want to see a bunch of dead trees all over these solar farms.
Absolutely.
What the heck, we didn't think about that.
Yeah,
But that makes sense.
And really, you put anyway, so, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where are we putting the rest of number 4, where are we putting it in that paragraph? Are we just adding it? Are we putting it inside? What are we doing here?
We made we left it as is.
The purpose of the minimum, that was the move.
We're putting it in
Yeah,
number
just put it at
6,
the
right?
end. I think it's fine, because it's
Just
just.
put it at the end?
Yeah, just put it at the end.
Okay.
But I think the thing that's funny about it is the sentence reads, the purpose of this minimum standard, and then if we move it to number 6, what is the minimum standard that we're referring to in 6? So I feel like we sort of need to rework it to kind of say that like, I don't know, the
The purpose
The
of
owner of the-
providing buffering.
applicant shall provide buffering to the greatest extent practical. To do that. So if we just change the beginning of that sentence to say.
Yeah, I think you're right now. If you change it, the purpose of this standard, take out the word minimum. The purpose of this standard is to provide buffering. to The greatest extent practical, provide a visual buffer to the solar farm from the budding residential. That makes sense. Just take it down
I
there.
would agree.
Okay. All right, we good on 6?
while we're still on the buffering, in the setback area, we have noted that, any disturbance will be replaced with a minimum 6 foot in height evergreen. I think in the buffering section, we don't have a standard of what the buffering plant's initial height has to be. Like, I don't want them to have a fence and then just purchase 2-foot plants, you know, like there should be.
Oh, it says. With the use of a 6-foot green privacy screen,
So this,
so that's different.
Trees of a minimum height X.
yes, exactly. Yeah, the initial plantings must be at least 4 to 5 feet in height, or bald and burlapped in height, or however you want to word it, which.
Yeah, I think it's
Sorry.
different. Just is 6 feet fair? That's what we did on the other spot.
Yeah. 6 feet. The only thing is that now your fence is already, the screen that we're requiring is at 6 feet. So if you start plants at 6 feet within a year, if you figure like a foot of growth on the plants, that is, I mean, it's not our problem. It would be the solar farm problem of their maintenance. They would now have to be pruning their trees below the fence, or they're going to have a shade issue with their apparatuses within the solar farm. So I think, to be fair, I would suggest requiring at least 4 feet. So in a year, it'd be 5 feet, and another year, you know. But if they pick the right species of native plants, some are significantly slower growers than others. So it's all about them just picking the right plant for the area.
So let's add a, note that the evergreen plantings in section 6 should be a minimum of 4 feet. All right. Last call, buffering, visual mitigation. Okay, number 7, application requirements. Any notes there?
I had a question on a couple of these, number 2, B2. Narrative mapping shall specifically address temperature increases and so on. My question was, is this a standard requirement? And if it's not, I mean, I think it's cool, but I'm just wondering how it's performed so that we can get the temperature increase impact, how it's proven so we know that the planning board's getting the right information and how it's provided. I'm just not sure if it's standard, then cool, let's go on. I just didn't know.
Yeah, I mean, the majority of this comes from.
Yeah, it's a
other
model template,
ordinances.
yeah. I think actually Berwick had this one, right? Didn't we use Berwick?
It's so long, I don't remember.
I think it was Berwick's, I think we used their model.
But Jeff, I mean, when you're looking at, cutting 20 acres, it's what they call that microclimate on the ground when they go and they hack everything down. That does have impacts on the wetlands. And so when you're starting to look at the wetlands, you're still gonna have to maintain a certain distance from those anyway. So from that setback requirement, if they're out by a stream, you're getting into the resource protection and everything, so they're not gonna be really coming close to it. But that's when they do the delineation for all the vernal pool mapping and everything. Okay, that would be critical. And that's really a state-driven process that would really tell us where those
So
are.
Maine DEP and Inland Fish and Wildlife will have to weigh in.
Be part of.
Yeah, they have to approve it.
Yeah.
I
So
just wanted it, so.
they'll be the
they're
ones who
bringing
really
stuff
are
to you
in the
guys,
weeds. so to speak, about this.
it's actual real
Information,
data,
yeah.
you know.
And while we're at it, I can't, is it Hope, Maine, I think I was in, which is right west of Rockland or Rockport. Has a UMaine extension is doing an experiment by planting blueberry bushes under solar panels to see if that works. And we should keep an eye on that. I think that would be a great use of.
It's still learn to keep it out of rack, that might not be.
But we're gonna-
Well, nowadays it's probably making.
Yeah, you gotta burn it.
Yeah, but it's, yeah, I took a photo, some photos up there.
Not a bad
Do
idea.
you have any other questions, Jeff?
I've heard of
Or anybody else?
Not on 2, I
No.
just had some clarification on 3, but.
While we're on 2, is there any way that we could also include where it says not only endangered species, but just general wildlife, or no?
Sorry, you're on
Same section, yeah, so,
number
Seven
3.
B2.
Number 3?
so under the environmental
okay, yeah.
impact assessment,
Yeah, I see.
section 2.
Yep.
The last sentence says streams and other water bodies and endangered species who live in around them. So we
That would
can,
be every piece of property in our town if you included, non-endangered species. So like deer and wild turkeys and possums and skunks, and
yeah,
I think that would, I mean. Yeah, they just,
Because this is talking about specifically calling out situations where the property may be close to wetland streams, endangered species or whatever, but like, to your point,
Right.
we have
if there were. a
wildlife
habi-
everywhere,
If
so.
there were a habitat there for endangered species, then Inland Fish and Wildlife would actually forbid them to some extent, or would find some mitigation. Or would not allow them to do things, but you can't really do that for wildlife that isn't protected, as much as we'd like to. Because, and then, John is gonna come over and shoot it anyway, so,
Somebody has to keep the population in control.
I feel that way about
Getting
people.
more.
just so you know, women have a better shot.
Okay, I'm gonna keep us on task here, number 3.
My wife and I.
Any other questions on number 3?
No, I think it was just, my head.
Okay, number 4. Wildlife corridors.
Number 4, I just had a wording thing.
Okay.
I just thought it would sound a little better saying a 6-inch gap under the security fencing is required and shall be maintained. to allow wildlife access through the site.
Okay.
Just kind of swapping.
Mhm.
Yep, agreed. Okay, and native species, just looking at the edits, native species is technically gonna be number 5 under B, right? Any comments on number 5, number 6? Okay, all right, we're on to C, site plan. Questions, comments, feedback? Nothing on C. D, cross sections. Nothing. E. Site plan, site maintenance plan, sorry. F, end of life.
So hold on a second.
Yeah.
So back up to cross sections.
Yep.
Let's add in there about the 5,000 feet. Let's add a sentence there. I'm looking at Craig. I hope he's following me. Because then on the plan, when you guys get it in front of the planning board, it will be spelled out for you by GIS right there.
Okay,
Site plan.
so you think should be on the site plan, they should have a,
You know, on the cross section,
but don't you want to
under
look?
D,
Oh,
see where it says adjacent roadways and neighboring structures,
okay,
existing proposed site modifications. It should be like,
Distance to closest solar array.
here, site plan, C5, I would put it there. Because you want it to be a plan, you don't want it to be an elevation, you don't want a cross section, you don't want an elevation or a
Okay.
section, you want
Okay.
to,
so,
you want it on a
That makes
plan.
sense.
yep,
Okay,
so.
yeah, so they're gonna give us a set of plans that has a, you know, a map that shows the parcel and it'll show what's.
So you could add it right after existing land uses and just put with a minimum of 5,000 feet between solar facilities or solar.
Well, or
Maintaining a minimum.
Yeah, maintaining, 5,000 feet.
we're just
put it
saying,
right after that.
including adjacent property, that's all.
Hmm.
We're just gonna see what's around it, right?
Okay.
Okay,
Good call. Okay, so we're gonna add in a note about the 5,000 feet separation to C5 adjacent roadways and neighboring structures.
well,
And
this
mark-
is, okay, so this is just what they're providing to us to look at.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't where we're putting okay, just, okay.
But like a part of the consideration to when they apply, right, is now, given the edits we've made before, is that they can't be setting up a solar farm within 5,000 feet of another, so like we should.
Right, but where does, this is
We
just,
can we can add a section to C5 and existing land uses, comma, in proximity
Yes.
to
Yeah.
other
Yes, exactly.
solar facilities,
Within 5,000 feet,
if applicable.
okay,
all right, and then no changes then to the cross sections, section B. Okay,
Yep.
all right, we were at end of life site restoration plan. Any, just for that entire section F, end of life site restoration plan, questions, comments? Okay, moving on to G, air glare protection. Yeah, air glare protection. Any questions there?
My question that I had written here, it was. Do we even need to require all this, or do we just need to say follow FAA rules? Or is that basically what it was said? Right, and it's like we're saying something here, but,
well, their rules might change,
right, and that's what,
so.
and can we get more, are we allowed to be more strict than the FAA rules and?
But my understanding is that there does need to be an FAA sign off on these solar farms anyway.
Okay,
So there would be some type of certification there, I believe. Did you see one with the last one?
I don't
I
remember.
remember
I still
there,
haven't seen that.
a prior planning board member who dealt with this. Said that there needs to be the certification process from the FAA.
And it looks like we're accounting for that here, because it says the applicant shall notify area airports and FAA for their review. And a 2-week comment period, which,
And all the correspondence has to be
Yeah.
given to us.
so whatever feedback they get back from the FAA. Is part of their application requirements.
That's all I guess a federal regulation.
Yeah,
And that's it's referenced there. I bet Phil will tell you that might be a federal regulation.
You can always add those things where that may be amended from time to time. But, you know,
As a catch-all.
yeah,
CYA.
well, in the event that they do away with it,
Mhm.
you know.
Perhaps someone can help me here. I just realized we brought that up, but if these arrays are near the I1, I2 corridors, if it's on the north side of the road, you may get glare off the panels to drivers. Is there anything? I mean, the FAA is one thing, and airplanes definitely. I mean, the panels will be tilted up, so maybe that's not so much an issue. Some might say, no, it'll be bouncing back up to the sky.
I say, I haven't seen it on 95 and even at 109 in Augusta where they're putting them in between the exits.
Yes.
I went through there the other day in bright sunlight and I didn't see it, but that's not guaranteeing.
No, I
You
know.
know,
it may be-
certain times of the year, I can't drive down Nice Pond Road because I can't see.
Right.
But you're right, it's,
I guess if there were roadways higher than, or houses higher than the solar arrays, that might be more somewhat of an issue. But I don't know that that's an issue in where we are. Think of some,
Stuff going on.
I'll leave it at that. I don't have any other.
it'll be covered with snow 5 months out here.
That's true. And they'll be covered with dust, the other.
It melts out quick.
It melts out quick and then it's like an avalanche.
Yeah. No, they comment there.
Okay, so we're not gonna make any changes to air glare protection?
Mm.
We're good.
Would be good.
Okay. All right, H, public safety. Got several bullet points under that. Any questions?
Number 3.
Mhm.
My question was, is the emergency vehicle turnaround, it just says that it needs to be there. Is it inside or outside of the fence?
I think it's outside.
Mm.
The turnaround, yeah.
And do we?
'Cause it
need
can't
to
really go-
identify that?
I mean, it can come in, I guess, and make a loop if there's that road that goes around it, but really it's about getting to the fence, I would assume.
Well, for emergency vehicles, fire would need to get to where the switch gear, the big inverters and the electrical equipment that might be burning.
So one thing about solar farms and when they burn very fast and very hot.
Yeah.
So the only thing that the fire department will most likely do is usually set up staging to, for the perimeter only, not for the actual panels.
They just come to the burn.
They have
They'll
to.
say they're not gonna do anything, put it out.
Yep, and if there's an emergency in there, then that little cart road that goes around, which is,
That's
In
your
most of
fire
them.
break.
so if somebody's in there working and something happens, then the ambulance can get in and get around. So that's again, something that you guys would condition and require at the planning board level.
Well, it's in there, so.
So does it need to be defined if it's inside or out for this thing? Okay,
I don't
that was
think
all.
Anything else under public safety?
The security fencing, was mentioned again on number 4. It- Just the redundancy of mentioning it, just wanted to make sure that. It matched. Page 2, section 74. Just for uniformity. Unless I'm misunderstanding.
Yeah, it's a 600 gap underneath, yeah.
So just making sure that we're. Talking the same. Thought it was. That's all I have.
I think it's important to keep though that the comment that it has the signage,
Yeah,
so that's definitely part of the spirit.
yeah. and that's Appropriate under public safety. Okay, public safety. 1 through 9 there, any other? Anything under public safety? Okay.
We're on what page?
We're on page 5. So on page 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, all fall under the public safety section.
I had, I'm sorry, it's back on, it's at the very top of page 5, battery storage.
Yep, we're still, that's the command. Yep,
As I would understand, they shouldn't have batteries. They should be hooking up to the live, the grid, and there shouldn't be any storage of batteries, is what I was thinking. If there is, I think we need to, that changes things. I think it changes the farm. But that is in my mind.
Why?
Well, what's a solar farm?
Produces power. Doesn't mean it has to go to the grid. I mean, it depends on what it is, but. If it,
We haven't seen what that doesn't though, I mean. I
But
can't-
a solar farm produces power.
Yeah, but
It
you
doesn't
can't
store
store
power.
3 megawatts in power, and you wouldn't have enough,
They,
that would be,
There's
No.
a push to.
there have been, technology is changing all the time. Batteries are getting higher density and whatnot, and
Yeah,
more exciting in terms of what they can store, so it might be limiting if we took that out. To say, to not, and I think this is really saying all equipment shall be listed and included, so if there are batteries, I think we wanna know about it. But solar farms, in the past, I come from a solar background, so, there are solar fields. That as part of the system, maybe on a demonstration or a utility, they do their own solar field, put batteries in so they can power condition.
Mhm.
So they can actually deliver, when it's really hot out, they can boost the voltage up a little, they can play with things. And that does have may have a battery component.
so if they have excess power on the grid, they could pump it to the batteries to keep it storage for when there's a drawdown.
There is some of that, yeah, exactly, you can smooth out the usage by having kind of a reservoir, even if it's a small one. I mean, 3 megawatts is a lot, and you wouldn't necessarily be able to pull a car that for very long, but. The electric companies like to be able to have a little buffering, so it may be there. I think, though, it wouldn't hurt to leave it in that item, because it's just saying if there are there, we want it listed.
yeah, if you guys are good, with I was just saying, thinking it changes, in my mind, it changes what. We're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, if they're proposing to put battery system in, it's something we don't want to know about. In my mind, actually. Side note, step back from position, etc. Having a solar field with a battery might not be a bad idea when the grid goes down for 3 days, like we just had a couple of weeks ago. And, the solar person, background to me says, wouldn't it be nice to have a plug that people could go and charge up their phones or. Or their cars,
Not a solar farm.
not a solar farm, but that may be something like that in the future. So I wouldn't roll it out.
I go to like on the opposite side, I go, we have batteries, that's like more for our first responders to look at, more for somebody to come after.
More we should know about it.
More, yeah.
We want to know that it's there if they have it.
Risk to the community.
Even the small, but a solar field has all kinds of technology in it. There are batteries in there to make sure that they're always keeping track of what's going on. Even if the grid goes down, they still keep track of the weather and what is this.
And if they have a solar panel down, then they only have so many hours to fix it anyway, right?
Yeah.
According, they watch them.
Yes,
So-
no, they want to. If the whole system goes down,
Yeah.
it's more, but nowadays parts of this field will go down. For the whole.
Okay, it seems like consensus is we're gonna leave battery storage in there. Okay, anything else under 6, 7, 8, or 9 here?
7. Emergency contact. I don't like the word best effort. Best effort will be made. I like that totally gone personally. The solar operator promptly notify the town of contact information changes. This contact is to respond to inquiries within 3 days. I don't think that's
Yeah.
ridiculous to require.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
And I am, and I'm sorry. And just above that, the line right before that, it says the direct contact information shall be reviewed for correctness and maintained through the life of installation. Would love to see the word annually there after that.
I really want that continuously. I mean, they could change the guy 6 months and we have to wait a whole other 6 months for.
Right,
And decommissioning, like,
Well, it says
Don't
the
forget
solar
to-
operator will promptly notify the town of contact information changes.
All right,
Yeah,
that's fine.
you'll leave it as that. We wanna know if it changes.
Mhm.
End of discussion. Put
Yep.
that in there. Just, it shouldn't have anything to do with the installation, life, and blah, blah. If the ownership changes, we need to know, we need to have emergency contact numbers and that stuff.
Right.
So tell me exactly how you want to word that.
Leave it the way it is, just take out the last line of best efforts.
Best efforts, okay.
Yeah, like this contact is to
Yep.
respond to inquiries, blah, blah, blah.
Perfect.
The only thing I'm gonna mention is. Last hot water issue down in town. The people, whatever, remember Tiffany helped out with that situation, you were getting water down to the people down there, cold water while their toilets were boiling,
Oh, and just how you mean?
yeah.
Yeah.
That's where I see a similar situation. We didn't know who to get in contact.
Hmm,
And they didn't get in contact because we didn't annually require them to get
right,
back. when we
yeah,
didn't
yeah,
have-
we didn't have a day contact.
Right. That's the only reason I bring it up. So it's your call, you guys are the ones that will be.
Oh, I agree with
contacted.
what Mallory said, just, you know, if it changes, they gotta maintain current contact information. If it
It's to their
changes-
benefit to notify us of when the contact changes, because we're the ones who are providing emergency services, et cetera, so.
So I think you're bringing up a good point, Jeff, and maybe I want to ask, maybe this last sentence is meant to require that the contact who is maintained continuously, we know who that is, respond. I can read it now, that they would respond within 3 business days. I say that's a long time. But the wording, I think, is a little vague, that we might want the wording to say, this contact, the site emergency is it emergency? Yeah, the emergency contact needs to be able to respond within, I'd say, 24 hours. Otherwise, a 3-day wait for an emergency is a long time. I mean,
Yeah.
this is a solar farm, this is a business, they should be able
Yeah.
to respond. I would change that, I would propose changing that to say,
24
this
hours.
site contact shall respond to a town query within 24 hours.
I'm good with that.
Say it one more
I think
time.
that's what you were,
Within
Yeah.
the,
the site
This contact-
contact
The
so-
site contact, okay?
shall respond to a town query, official town query, I don't know how you want to phrase that.
Want to increase from the town within 24 hours, the last sentence.
Yeah.
Just,
Modify the last sentence and
Right.
get rid of 3 days, put in 24 hours.
and get rid of best efforts at the. end.
Yes,
Or, sorry, at the beginning.
the site contact needs to respond.
You want to change it to the site contact? And then at the end, it's 24 hours.
Yeah.
Okay, you got it.
okay.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
I think that might help
Cool,
get to where you were hoping for.
okay.
That's a good point.
Anything on 8 or 9?
8, I had written snow removal plan. That was all. So I didn't read it. Right, I just had snow removal as far as. do we need to-
Unobstructed and passable. I mean, it's,
The road should be maintained free of ruts, potholes, and the like to prevent obstruction or damage to town vehicles.
So, I'm thinking about the subdivision that was planned, I think behind where Barbara actually lives. They wanted to put that road in, and then they were gonna put it up here and down here over the,
Oh, the one down by the counting house? you mean?
yeah. Amy's Lane, I think is what it was. Conversation about that right away was, where's the snow gonna go?
Right,
These are
and,
dead-ended
and
roads.
plans typically, when you see a subdivision, or actually even just, multiple houses, yeah, they put in this is where our snow will go, but I think we should have some faith that they're gonna have to think about that.
So
Okay.
again, that's something the planning board can ask of them too.
Yeah.
to
And it's
feedback.
not like, whereas a subdivision is, people are driving back and forth. This is, I don't think that there's gonna be a ton of traffic up and down this road
it'd
frequently.
be like the gas line on 236. They're gonna move the snow because they need to get in there.
Mhm.
They're gonna take care of the snow. They're not gonna put in a big pile.
This isn't something they want to get around. Do you know what I mean? Like, most of this is about stuff they try to cut corners on or get around, but they don't want to and things like that, so I don't,
maintain access
to get in.
yeah, so I don't, I
Yeah,
wouldn't.
I mean, it's pretty clear if a tree falls on it, they need to move it.
Yeah, no,
Construction is intense for solar farms, okay, how they're putting it together, getting the, site ready and they put up the whatever. Once it's done and they're totally off-site, there's only like a truck that goes there a couple times a year.
Just to check it.
Yep.
And that's part of the thing that concerns me, is no one goes down here until there's something that's needed.
So they watch. They watch their panels all the time.
Okay.
So if something goes down on their grid, that's when they pop up.
Okay.
Because a lot of these companies are from Massachusetts and other areas, you know?
This guy, they were from Virginia. the
Yeah.
people that went right here.
So I just wanted to mention it because I don't wanna end up having a point where we're saying.
No one's gonna make you shovel, Jeff, don't worry.
Unobstructed and passable. Here.
Okay. Anything else
That's all I
on
know.
8 or 9 electrical narrative? Okay. All right, we're on to decommissioning and abandonment, section I.
Do I have a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
I too, a solar farm shall be considered abandoned. if it Fails to operate for more than a year. How do we know it's not operating? Don't know, this comes from your lawyer.
The CMP notified?
Why would they? I mean, they wouldn't call us. I'm sure they'd be calling the company. I don't think they call the town. I don't know how you could police that. And if it's the lawyer put it in there,
So, I mean, would this be a
By
situation-
asking for annual report generation.
Would this be like a situation, I mean, where, I don't know, somebody might be like, what's up with that solar farm? Can you check it out, Jenny?
well, if the road's not plowed all winter, it'd be a good idea that they're not using it.
Or if the panels stop moving,
Correct.
panels move up towards the sun,
Some do.
you know?
Yeah.
Oh, the answer.
Many are fixed
Read-
arrays.
Right.
Excuse me, read one, the answer's in one. Well, in one, the owner or operator shall notify the code enforcement officer by certified mail of the proposed date of discontinued operations and plans for removal. So the code enforcement officer may grant one-time extension, blah, blah, blah. So before they do anything, this sounds like it's come from the lawyer, I was reading it. Then there's probably a legal requirement somewhere in a statute that says they have to formally notify. I would say the power company, I would say in this case, if he put it in us. So we would have to get, if we have current contact information. And they're gonna discontinue the power. My guess is CMP would be notified, power companies, we'll get notified. So it's in the answers in one there.
What's the?
If you mean
lifespan?
CMP is disconnecting them or
What's that?
ending the service.
I would assume if the lawyer wrote this,
75 years.
yeah, I assume if the lawyer wrote this, there's something that I'm not privy to, that there's a law, I can check with Bill, but. That there's something there that they must, because when they get decommissioned, they gotta go through quite a process, like they, you know. You can't just be left and abandoned in the woods. So I assume that there's some kind of statutory requirement that would, I assume that, I'll check with Bill and find out. But the answer to the one for us, it's that the owner operator shall physically remove the installation. The operations, the owner operation will notify code enforcement officer by certified mail proposed data to discontinue operation.
Give them a simple letter from the customer yearly stating, yes, we have produced energy this year. They, we require that they maintain, send an annual notice that they're operating. If you don't get that letter, then you could assume it's been off.
There has to
But,
be a
but
reason why we're
conversely
doing-
though, we're requiring them to notify us when they're not gonna be operating.
Let's assume they're operating until they tell us they're not.
Yeah,
Let's
exactly.
just, let's assume they wanna do that, and we'll all be dead anyway by the time this actually ever happens, so.
Unless that meeting.
It's usually good to be 100. then you can go.
Operator shall notify.
Chris,
But assuming.
Hi.
No
Hi,
employees.
guys. I'm kind of leaning toward what Zach is thinking. If lawyers wrote this, that's fine. It may end up being litigated. And if you have no direct date or evidence of when operation stopped, then all the other following information about decommission falls away, because as a town or a customer, you won't be able to prove when they stopped providing service. So I'm not clear on this. how do we know they're providing service? So are people getting, bills? Is there something that we could use to identify when this happens? Because it only protects the town if it does get litigated in terms of decommission, because you will not be able to prove when they stopped producing. I know you just say, don't worry, it won't happen, but it just could happen. And why not put it in there?
Number one covers it.
Number one covers it if there is a company who's there. What if they go?
Yeah.
And the phone?
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
my only question.
I think there's no harm in us adding in an additional statement under 1 or 2 to ask the applicant to provide an annual report to us indicating like this is our power,
Energy produced.
energy production, whatever for the year. I'm gonna leave it at that.
Okay, which one? 1 or 2?
I would say under 2 because 2 is where we're
I
talking
agree.
about like
So applicant,
Who they providing it to?
the
provide,
code enforcement
code
office.
office, yep.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, so somebody needs to read number 3 then, and let's look at number 3 for a minute. An applicant for site plan review of the solar farm shall submit a performance guarantee. Okay. In the amount of 125% of the expected decommission cost. So when they're doing a site plan review in front of you, long before they ever talk about closing that down, we've got to come up with an estimated cost of what that would be to tear that site, put it back the way it was, okay? And the amount of 125% of the expected decommission costs, including inflation, you'll have to figure that, over the expected life of the system, in the form of a performance bond running to the town or some other form of surety that is acceptable to the town manager. So,
So we're basically requiring them
I-
to get a bond.
right, they're gonna have to, you guys, before anything happens at a site plan review, they're gonna have to tell you, we're estimating this is gonna be a 25-year project. This is at the end of that 25 years, the planning board ought to figure inflation, plus 125% of the cost to close that up. And all of that has to be put into a performance bond that's acceptable to me before this can even be passed anyway, so.
And then number 4
I
is
was
like the
just gonna
trigger
say
for that,
number
of,
4. Yep.
like, if they haven't basically dealt with it with 180 days, then we have the right to, they basically call that bond.
Right,
I think we're good on this.
Understand what 3 and 4 were saying, so.
Yeah, so it's just like, it's like an insurance kind of thing that they're required to get.
Yeah.
To cover.
I have absolutely no
Please.
doubt year 24, they will go bankrupt.
Okay, so thank you for pointing that out, Tim. So I think if we, does everyone agree that if we kind of look at everything holistically in this section, 1, 2, 3, and 4, that the requirement of getting this performance guarantee or bond or whatever we want to call it, it kind of covers us in that scenario.
Are we still adding applicant shall provide an annual report?
Yeah.
Are we still adding that sentence in?
I would.
Yeah, okay.
We don't have that necessarily how much that might be private or business matter, but we need to know if there was.
If they're doing anything.
That gives you a legal basis to say, okay, we didn't get one left. It's
Let's
been
move-
more than a
move
year.
on. Yep.
Yeah.
And we can assume it's abandoned. Nobody's answering the phone. That bond,
Yeah, the
that
biggest-
would be the justification that the bond is triggered.
Yeah. Number
You're
4
gonna,
covers
you're
that.
gonna end up litigating, there needs to be one sentence in there. Yeah, there needs to be what constitutes notification, so,
Mhm.
certified mail.
yeah, there needs to be somewhere in here, I would say, probably under.
So it says number 1, it says certified mail.
Yeah.
I know.
That's if they're discontinuing.
What's this one?
So we tell Phil to stop.
Right, but the owner has to notify the CEO of discontinued operations, but the question that we've been talking about is. What if we think?
Do we need
Yeah,
them to
that's-
notify us
and
with
so,
this,
you know-
this annual power report or whatever via certified?
Yeah.
Typically, you can send them a certified letter saying, we intend to invoke section 1 of the ordinance. Because, we've seen this, please note the 180 days begins from the date of the notification.
Okay, not to be too much of a cynic, but maybe it would be better if we just annually put a tickler under call CMP and make sure they're still working, but they could just lie. They could just send us a letter that says, yes, we're still in operations, and they've abandoned it 2 years earlier.
Well, but in your site plan review, they have to give us a performance bond
Right.
to tell us how long they think they're gonna run this
I got you.
business
I got you,
And
but it-
that bond is given to us for that.
That's,
So I guess the only thing would be, is if they go belly up.
that's where you get screwed, because that's a really a credit issue against the companies.
right.
So
We don't want
if they go belly up, does their performance guarantee
Disappear with them?
disappear with them?
No.
No, that's, we use it then, you would have to use it to clean the site out.
Yeah,
So if they go belly up after 15 years and this takes 25 years, would take us 10 years to decommission it, or when, I guess that's why I'm kind of leaning with Zach about.
25 years is just the length of, what they say the panels are gonna run.
As soon as they go belly up, we can get our bond.
That's right.
Yeah.
So that's just the life of the panels, which is the 25 years, but they could go 30 years, they could go 27, they could go whatever, but
That's a good question though for Phil though. Tim, the bankruptcy,
just like what happens,
because
how does
when
this
you,
section
when
play
you
out?
say you're getting a bond, it's an actual piece of paper with a seal and everything on it, it's cash.
Mhm.
But it can't be discharged in bankruptcy.
No.
Madam Chairperson,
I don't know, I don't know.
Go ahead, Chris.
may I just completely agree with Greg? That was my concern initially when I reviewed this in December. A lawyer that knows a little bit more about bankruptcy might be appropriate, because I know we need the money for the decommissioning, and this, I'm not a lawyer. But that was my first concern. A lot of properties, businesses file, and then where does it leave the town?
Okay, so-
It's worth it. It's worth investigating.
Okay, so with this section, I think we agree that we're gonna add in the statement under number 2, that we're asking the applicant to provide us with an annual generation report
Yes.
via certified mail. But then Tim, are you paying attention?
But yeah, I'm
I know
looking
you
at
have
the
some
main
background.
solar law right now.
Oh, okay, all right. I
Let's
think
see.
for this one, I think just for this section, we just want to ask a general question to Phil about, okay, what happens if the applicant goes bankrupt? And how does that?
So I made a note, Tim, for you on that.
Thank you.
So we'll deal with that tomorrow if you want with Bill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. And then whatever, suggestions or feedback or whatever you get from him will be good to share with the board.
Should be red. I'll circle red.
So if I call mine, I'm get 100,000.
Good idea.
Okay, so does everyone feel good about that section, the approach we're gonna take there? We'll follow up with everybody on that.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I just want to tell you that what I did was, under 2, that sentence, I just took it one little part further and I just said annual report via certified mail to the code enforcement officer.
Perfect.
Just so that it's clear of who they're sending it to.
Yeah, I love it. I think Jenny, in any scenario where you feel like there's like little bits of clarification like
Okay.
that, like, I think, do we all agree to kind of give her the freedom to edit that
Mhm.
stuff and see that we trust you? Okay, that's decommissioning and abandonment. Anything else from that section? Okay, J, inspections. Anyone got anything?
I had a question about that.
Mhm.
I had my question was, will a report be made after an inspection is made by us, by the town? It says that code enforcement or fire chief or designee can go at random intervals to inspect with or without advance notice. I didn't know if we need to do that or if it would be good to do that for year 10, that you're noticing something happening, or if it's not even worth mentioning.
Sorry, I'm not understanding what your question
So
is.
are you saying that maybe do like, have like a chunk of years, so like every 5 years, re-CO these sites or something like that, or every 10 years, check them out and make sure they're establishing, because so for anything that comes in from the planning board and has like a site plan, we have to review them annually anyway, we're supposed to. So if anything was to go wrong, then it would be captured in their condition and their findings of fact again. I
So
don't
there's
know
an
if that
annual
helps.
review that sort of already
Yeah.
is part of our usual process.
Mhm.
That's, I just wasn't sure if it was being captured, because if you guys are going out on a random basis, being like, oh, I'm gonna go inspect this. if there's no reports, then why do it? Yeah, is what my point was.
But do you provide reports for any
So,
inspections?
Even if it's for yourself.
so here's the thing, what we can do is we can see letters, so we can say, this writer inspected the site. There were no findings, or these were the findings, they're being dealt with here. We can definitely do that.
But I don't know if we need to do that. I'm not looking for, I don't care about the solar people. I'm talking about protecting the town, and if it's in our own processes, then we're good.
So it's in our processes anyway, however, if there was something wrong, we would write a letter anyways, if there was nothing wrong, we wouldn't, it's like no news is good news kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that would be kind of like. that's
We
what-
don't need to put more admin.
Exactly.
Don't make
On
one
you,
word.
the police, or anybody. So if it's good, it's good. If it's bad, we'll know.
Yeah,
Now you're talking about impact fees here.
Okay, so we're good on inspections?
I'm pro impact.
I just have a question for Jenny, actually.
Yep, go ahead.
Sure.
Jenny, do we have, a designee? It says the code officer or the officer's designee, because,
So in this situation, it would be the fire chief.
okay,
If you go on to read that, it will say, shall prevent the code officer and fire chief or their designee. So it'd be the assistant fire chief. So we would work in combination with something like a solar farm.
okay,
That's not true for all projects, but definitely for this.
okay.
So wouldn't it be, don't we have a deputy? CEO?
No, did you
No.
want to apply?
That would be a designee.
Nor do we have the room in the budget. So let's not go there.
If we did, yes, that would be, but for right now, it would be Nick,
Okay.
Chief Hamel. Yeah.
Madam Chair.
Yep.
So I'm looking and reading the main agricultural conservation and forestry technical guidance for a solar facility. It talks about an annual inspection. I don't know, the question I'd ask though, who's required to do the annual inspection? And it says the annual inspection will include the fence line, will include vegetation, include the panels. And so it sounds to me like someone's being required to annually inspect that once a year. And I'm leaning, the way this sounds is probably somebody I would say coming from Maine Agricultural Conservation and Forestry. It'd either be a forest ranger or somebody from that department, I would assume. Who would go in and look at all those things. And then it says in there, if there's problem with the vegetation, they have to contact the landowner who maintains that. If there's probably electrical panels that they got identified, somebody there, so when they talk about maintenance, they're talking about an annual inspection of the site. So somebody,
Somebody from the state's doing it.
well,
We need,
I have-
we need to get clarification.
I gotta find out, is that him or is that gonna be expected to be us? Because if that's expected to be us, then that would need to go in here, say that once a year annually, you would inspect the site and give a letter of certification.
But that's a state law, right?
What's
You're
that?
saying it's a state law.
Well, it's under the main, main agricultural conservation regulation for solar farms.
All right, well,
But anything that comes in front of the planning board anyway, we're legally required to inspect every year for site plan anyway.
So you're out there no matter what.
But I'll ask,
Yeah, let's
I'll
ask.
find out. But it sounds like by reading that, that somebody's already been tasked with doing that from the state and they have to report it back to the state.
Okay,
I'll put it on your note for Bill. You want me to go?
Please.
thank you.
The list is long glorious.
Okay,
I wrote that in green.
K, other laws applicable.
They're the best.
Other laws remain applicable, sorry. That's sort of like our catch-all thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is bringing just what he said.
All right, so we're now on to page 7, where, you guys are talking about adding some definitions, it looks like, and then also table A stuff,
right.
or
and-
modifying. some
In that,
definitions,
in
sorry.
that public utilities basically don't require certain things, and we want this to be outside of those things. We want it to be its own thing.
So you want to call it out as a
Yeah,
standalone
public-
row
yeah,
solar
Public
farm?
utilities, carte blanche, whatever.
Yeah.
And we're
They
saying.
get to do all sorts of stuff without any review. and all that.
Okay, so you want to,
Also, it's not public.
Separately define it.
we're gonna keep public utility as is,
Yep.
and we're gonna separately define solar farms, okay,
Yep.
okay,
And then
thank you.
That's it.
modify table A.
Yep, and we're gonna modify table, in your recommendation to modify table A is to add a new row for solar farms as defined, as you guys have defined. And then on the table would actually be populated with a major site plan review for I1 and I2 and all other zoning districts would be no.
Yep.
Correct.
I have a question about the definition.
Yep.
So the definition is about halfway down the page. My question is, there's a 1 and a 2 in that definition. Is it 1 and 2, or is it 1 or 2? It's,
One and two.
so it's going, a solar farm is going to be both of those things, or
That's either or.
either, okay. But I want to make
Oh,
sure.
I'm sorry, I didn't have, okay.
So it's 1 or 2.
Mhm.
Okay, we should just maybe put like a big
Or-
capital or in there, just to make that clear, because that's a good question, because I would have read it as like and.
And I want to point out that that definition does not say anything about battery or electric storage,
No, it's and. It's not or.
but
Oh,
we're allowing it
okay.
in our ordinance earlier.
No, you're just allowing, you're just asking them to let you know if it has batteries.
That's like saying to a 12-year-old, please provide your driver's license. You're requiring something that they shouldn't be having. So that's where my question is. If it's not a solar farm, should there be batteries on it? That's all. I'm not gonna belabor that, but I just want to make sure.
And where are we getting they shouldn't have batteries? Like, is that explicitly stated anywhere? Like, I don't feel like that's anything. that
So
we're
if the issue
considering.
is battery storage, and if you don't want battery storage presents a whole other avenue of public safety
Right.
issue, which is a big thing coming up, I know, in the county, about how to handle battery hazardous material fires, and it's a big issue.
Yeah.
So if you don't want it, then say you don't want it. But I think there's gonna be some element of battery backup systems here in the shed.
I say there has
You know,
to be, there's gotta be a battery
monitoring
backup. It's
computers.
powerful.
So, but if you're talking battery storage, I know there's a
One is
big push
for
to do
the
that.
equipment and maybe one is for the generation.
Yeah,
Should we add something to the definition here to just clarify that,
I don't,
to include like. That may include batteries for the purposes of like backup, system backup, but
I
not,
think you're getting way in the
I
weeds.
don't, yeah, I don't
I'm
know
just-
enough about solar farms to really wanna,
yeah.
they put them in, they seem to work fine.
Yeah.
We can only limit so much and regulate so much, and also, as Zach put out, technology constantly changes. And they wanna maintain this, they don't wanna have a big fire, I'm sure they'll do just fine. I just don't think it's our business after that.
I just want to bring it up. It's not in that
Stop
definition.
it, stop bringing things up, Jeff. I wanna go home and finish Lost.
And once we're on the
Okay?
once we're on the last page, I have.
Okay, so
No,
we good with the definition as it is, but we're gonna put in an or. Okay.
Yeah, so you said that.
Two or more.
Sorry.
Good with the or, like, I assume you're taking the notes on that.
Yeah, I added the.
Okay, and that was one thing.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're talking about
Number
like
2,
the-
though, doesn't talk about anything
Yeah.
with solar panels. So,
what's the definition of solar farm? So it talks about it right there.
no, I know, but if we're saying or, then it's like you have to look at the 2 completely separately, and number 2 doesn't talk about anything solar related at all. I don't know if that matters.
I've never given it
I don't know why you
much
need an or.
conversation. I don't
Okay.
know why we left the or out. I don't think it needs to be an and or.
It's 1 or 2.
Right.
Let's, so
You just said or.
Jenny, can you
No, it's
just,
because it's 1
It's a list,
or
it's a
2.
list, it's not,
We had a long
Either or.
conversation about
it's,
it's this or this,
Yeah, you mean 1,
or you mean two.
you mean 2.
okay,
If
okay,
there was one under the other, it would be different than in a sense.
just take the or out, forget.
okay, leave it as is. All right, anything else on page 7? Okay, so then we're left with, adding the solar farm to table A with major site plan for I1 and I2, no for everything else. Questions, comments, final things. I know you said you had a few.
Yeah, has Denise chimed in on this?
That's cool.
Denise?
No.
Economic developer, as far as how it's impacting I1 and I2. And what about noise? Inverters, batteries, they make noises. I'm not sure if we need to take that into account.
I haven't seen it in any other solar ordinance that I read. Anywhere
Yeah.
else, so I would say somebody else would have picked it up by now. And these were, this was a model draft that. When they did this, they took them by 3 or 4 others. I haven't seen or heard of any.
Lighting. Are we requiring lighting at the gate entrance for the knockbox? Are we? If we are, do we need to define? Shielded lighting and all that baloney that we.
Correct.
We already
Picked
have-
up in site plan.
we have a light ordinance.
Yeah.
We have a light ordinance,
Like
yep.
Pam said. Only
And
my
you're gonna
neighbor-
naturally have a light there because it's gonna have the control panel with those special gloves and the shut off switch. It's gonna have the knock box, gonna have everything right there.
Okay, but it's not required because it's not mentioned in this ordinance.
Could you get that in site plan review if you wanted to?
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be an access point, so you're gonna have to have a light there. So I think
Get
that's
that-
gonna be electrical.
They can pick that up and see the site.
Yeah,
plan
that's gonna
review.
get picked up in site plan.
Yeah.
I think that was it.
Okay. Would you like Denise to take a look? Cause I can get it to her. Let's do
I just,
it.
Now, Denise has no reason to be looking at this.
Oh, you sure? All right.
Denise doesn't, as a manager, I can tell you is no.
Mhm.
I was just looking at it as the I1, I2 zone. That was the only reason why
There's probably one parcel that qualifies at this point. Really, how many 20-acre parcels are there?
Six.
Unless you go to the top of the hill.
Yeah.
Right,
The whole,
and the whole quarter is taken up by.
one of the things I want to remind both boards about is exactly what, Hershey, what you mentioned when we came in and we started. You know, and when we dug into this earlier, CMP had made it very much aware. The substation cannot handle any more power here.
Right.
There's very little room for expansion anywhere else around, and it involves like 6 towns. It's like Elliott, Berwick, South Berwick, North Berwick.
There are 3 substations. We saw a graph that had everybody and how much power they're generating,
Right,
and there was room for one more, and that was it.
one more. And there are towns around us that already have them proposed.
Yep.
So we're kind of like way behind the 8 ball. Anyway, by the time we get this done,
Yeah, no one's.
Nobody's gonna want it anyway.
somebody else is gonna. have
We're in the
already
good.
built the grid. And Hershey's absolutely right. When we did that presentation, it was like $6 million to upgrade the
$6 million
transfer
bucks.
station.
That was,
So-
before,
And that
yeah.
burden would be placed on the person wanting a solar farm. So,
One farm wouldn't do.
Okay, so, before,
we don't have to do this, we can just decide now.
so I was actually, let me finish, I got something on this one, so our moratorium ends March 2nd. Of 23, I just looked that up. So if we back that out. We need to have a public hearing
the next board meeting, you should set a date for a public hearing.
on Tuesday.
Put that on the agenda to set a date.
You guys need to have a public hearing too.
Nope, we're.
Oh, you've already had
No,
yours.
they're
for
done.
that. Okay.
It's you.
Okay, so, can we try to work with Phil this week and get all of the edits and stuff together, and get it to the council, before our next board meeting?
Yeah, we might have to bump, yeah. I mean, even if we bump the date out to so this is gonna be the second meeting in January. So even if we bumped it out to the first or the second meeting in February, that still gives time for Bill to look at it for a week. Let me call Phil tomorrow. Yeah.
Okay,
We'll make it
and
work.
make sure we're good
Yeah.
from a timeline
Well,
perspective.
I'll put it together and make it work.
Okay, awesome.
So any updated documents to the board, when are they due? Were they due today? So
No, I gotta have them I would have to have them for next Thursday, but what I gotta ask Phil is, do we have to have the document? We gotta have the documents 10 days in advance of the public hearing for the public to review. But I don't know that we gotta have those documents
When we
ready
set the public hearing.
when we set the public hearing.
I don't think we do.
But we gotta have them, I'm pretty sure you're right, I don't think we do. We just, so we can set the public hearing we can set the public hearing for the
First meeting in February.
first meeting in February, and as long as we have them 10 days prior to.
Yeah.
I think we're okay,
Okay,
and then you could vote on it. You can put it on the agenda, vote on it second thing in February. So
and then we go.
let me talk to Phil, when we talk to Phil tomorrow.
Yeah.
I'll just look at the ordinance when I get to the office, I just don't have it for me.
Okay,
That's fine, but it's not that, I'm just saying there's not that many here that we can't just pop them on it into the computer and be done with it. And then.
yeah, the
get it
edits
back
are
to
pretty
you.
minimal unless
They
there's
are.
some big stuff from
And-
Bill.
Yep.
And Phil's already seen this once.
Yep.
So if we just, put your eyes on it ASAP, and he's already digested this one.
Yeah. Okay. All right, so we're on track from that perspective. Okay. Any other solar farm thoughts? Okay, so we're at 8:10. Took us an hour and 40 minutes to get through the solar farm one. I have to leave in 50 minutes. Can we get through marijuana in 50 minutes, or should we table this for another day?
I would move on it. If you gotta
Okay.
delay and have another meeting, fine, but
Also, we don't have to review the part that has to do with licensing. We're only here for
Right.
the planning, the
Mhm.
zoning part.
So we
So,
only have more for the solar farms.
right, so do you want to just skip to that?
Yep.
All of us, and then if you guys have to continue on, you don't have to be there for it?
Yep.
Okay,
Way
Okay,
to get out of
so
here early, Hershey.
Yeah.
Leave the rest of us
A
here.
lot of people.
You're smart.
The page 9 where we start? No,
so on page 1, we have some definitions.
that's all about licensing. This is all licensing stuff, licensing. Appeals, federal.
Yeah, it is.
Here we go. Page 7, is that where we start? 140-9,
nope.
no?
Oh, that's like in terms, right?
We start on page 9.
9, page 9, there we go. That's us, home occupation.
So just as a general comment throughout the entire document, I think we just need to do one big find and replace with cannabis and marijuana.
Yep.
Because there's just a few stragglers.
So the only generalized comment that I have
Okay.
is you asked us to do the medical cannabis caregiver home occupation.
Yep.
And from past meetings, I gather the sentiment has been, you didn't really have a lot of issues with that. So, which is good. So if you don't have questions with that, which we can answer for you if you do. My only thought would be, if you look at the licensing piece, you just have to go through and make sure that in particular, I'm looking at my page 5, says approval and operating requirements. In particular, page 5, E, F, G, H, and J, those address hours of operation, parking, signage. Those are just in the licensing piece. It looks like those were kind of generically put in. But if you adopt the home occupation standard, those need to change to reflect that over there. That's all. That's really my only.
Or they.
Or you have to agree. If you don't like ours, change ours.
Yeah,
and go-
they
what I mean,
just,
so
they need to be synced
they
up.
just need to be synced up.
Well, and also, I would say things that have to do with licensing, you should leave in your licensing section, and things that have to do with zoning, you should defer to our zoning section, so like lighting, parking, signage, hours, I don't, whatever.
Well, it's good to have it in the licensing, it isn't twice.
I don't know, well, they would.
I think if you look at all the other towns, it's kind of the same thing. The only other thing I would suggest for your consideration would be to, just like we were talking about annual inspections, is to have as part of the licensing application, an annual inspection. It's a legal business, no one questions it. However, you really do need to know what's in these buildings. I talked to 4 different fire chiefs about what they do in their towns. And they all strongly suggested you'd need to have an annual inspection that's signed off by your code enforcement as well as the fire chief. you need to know what chemicals are in there. And so that was a real, that would be my only other ad for what it's worth, but you're in charge of the licensing piece.
That for businesses or home on?
I would say for licensing,
Yeah, but for home, no way am I gonna authorize them walking into somebody's house. Not happening.
But for like a business, like a cultivation or something, is that what you mean? Like,
That's different, a grow. But for a registered caregiver, even licensing one. You're going into, it states in there, it has to be at their home. So, I don't know how we can require that. Require it for any other business.
So I think,
yeah, I mean, that's something, I think this is a unique business. In the sense of it's not the whoopie pie lady that we've used forever, however, I'm thinking
I'd
if
really like
I'm,
to see what's in her kitchen.
if I'm a fire department and I'm responding to a home. There should be some type of chemical inventory in there, because don't forget, these individuals can do to a limited extent the extraction and the processing, which involves those heavy chemicals.
Agreed.
So that's what I think that should be signed off on. I don't think you need to go into the home. I think you go into the business area. Again, if I'm a responding fire department, I
But
want
there,
to know what's in there.
but there are other home occupations where you could be a photographer with a dark room that have a lot of all sorts
Then
of
they should be
chemicals, or you could be a farmer.
Mechanics.
And
But
they
we
should be
don't,
inspected
but we
too.
don't inspect home occupations.
And that's the gray area. I go back and forth, right? I live next to the fire chief. He's been in my garage. He doesn't want to come put a fire out in my garage, right? I do all kinds of automotive and paint work. That's not really a place they want to go into. He knows it because he's been in there, but nobody else does. I understand what you're
Yeah.
saying,
Yeah.
and if it wasn't in a home, if it was in a business. Like Kind Farms, they need to go in there. 161 Gunket Road, they need to go in there. He's growing. They need to know the footprint of that building. They need to know if they have to go in to put out a fire, they need to know where to
They
go.
did.
100% agree with that.
Yeah, but he's a home caregiver. under
He's
the
a home
laws,
caregiver
whatever,
that's-
however we do
No,
that.
he's overstepped, I think.
As soon as you get into the home, that's where I have an issue with that. But we'll
Okay.
talk about
That's
that.
what
after
the
explore
council
the
up with it.
licensing section.
Right,
which
yeah,
is
that's
strictly-
Yeah, we can talk about that
Yeah.
later.
That's your
Thank you for the
prerogative.
input, Greg, but let's focus in on, so really the performance standards portion of this really is starting page 9 through the end, right?
Yeah.
That's the majority of the performance standards. So if there's any questions or comments or, explanation we would like from the planning board.
I
I
need
think-
clarity on page 10, but we're not there yet.
Okay, starting at this section, medical cannabis caregiver home occupation and below, questions, comments? Page 9. So we're not talking about licensing right now. We're just talking about the performance standards section, which is where the planning board comes into play. Licensing is just for us. We're gonna have to talk about what our plan is for the licensing stuff.
We said you couldn't include it, that you might have to be like, do while you're on vacation.
I think, crazy with on the premises on, 1B. There shall be no outdoor storage for materials or products on the premises associated with the business on the premises. I don't know if we need a second on the premises.
Yeah, no, we don't. Just lose one. We'll cross that. Yep. Okay. On the next page, so this is D, 1D.
D, 1D. Square footage limitations, a cannabis caregiver home occupation shall be carried on wholly within the principal building or within a building or other structure accessory to it. And shall utilize at a maximum no more than 500 designated square feet per licensed caregiver, or where two registered caregivers are growing on or within the same property, maximum of 1,200. That's just growing, correct?
The intent is they're limited to 1,200 square feet cumulatively, so 1,200 for everything. It's
So
not
this-
just grow.
The state law, right, is 500 square feet of canopy, right, per
That's where
caregiver?
this is where the plan work. This is one of the items that we got hung up on.
Yeah.
And that's where we settle at the 1,200.
So I don't have an issue with the grow area, but I have an issue with if he wants to use the whole bottom floor of his house for the shop. Why couldn't he?
As the dissenter on this one, I have to say there aren't any other home occupations, whether major or minor, I believe, that we limit the size of what you can do in your home. It was only this one, and I guess people were shocked by it on the road and didn't want to have a similar problem with sort of, something that outsized, perhaps. I don't know. The 500 square feet comes from the fact that you're allowed 500 square foot of canopy for a caregiver to begin with.
Which I understand, and I agree with that one. I'm good with that. It's just. Is that 500 square feet all inclusive?
Yes.
Is that you can only
That was the
have
intent.
500 feet to conduct the whole business, growing and retail sale or
Yep.
sales to people?
Yep.
That's, I think it should state out that it's for growing and then,
So hold on, because under home occup, you can't sell on site anyways.
No, you can if it's grown there.
So
so a caregiver can't sell on site.
look at F1.
Yeah, they can. It has to be that they they can't import
No.
stuff to process and grow and sell. They can sell whatever they grow on site,
No goods may be sold from property which were
which are
not
not
produced
produced
on
on
site.
site.
So if they grow the marijuana on site,
Mhm.
Yeah.
they can sell the marijuana on site.
Yes,
Right?
yeah.
So if they can grow the marijuana in a 500 square foot outbuilding. By this, the way this is written, they can't have any space in the house to actually have clients come in and purchase the material.
Well, or process or anything else. It's completely right.
Or they can't utilize the maximum that they're allowed by state law, which is 500 square feet of canopy.
Right, they could use 100 square feet of canopy and then they could use the other 400 square feet to process or sell.
They're already limited by the state and what they can. The thing is, the state already limits how much they can grow. And we can limit it by saying you can only have 2 growers, I guess, on a property, because then you could get your in-laws.
Which again, I agree with that too. I don't
Right.
want to have 5 people living in a house growing 2,000 square feet.
Right,
Got that.
So
So this goes
essentially,
back quite some time, and when the prior board reached out to the local expert, that person advised that 500 or 1,000, should be more than adequate, and really gets into a commercial level operation. And so what we were looking at, some of us, not all of us perhaps, is where does home occupation really cross the line in a residential zone from being a home occupation into being a commercial operation in a residential zone?
but that's also true of somebody who decides they want to grow tomatoes as a home occupation, or my neighbor raises pigs. And we don't limit the size of his barn, we don't limit the number of pigs he's allowed, we don't even say where you can have it on his property. It's only marijuana we're doing this with, and it's because people don't like marijuana. I think,
Okay.
not-
all right, I'm trying to keep us on task here. This is the language that we have here. Can we talk about the specifics of what's here and what we want to address? It seems like to me, my thought is if we're talking about 2 registered caregivers. With the 1,200, we're basically giving those 2 caregivers 200 square feet of other space potentially. I guess a minimum, depending on how much canopy they choose to grow, 200 square feet of like. Space for other things, right? Whereas if it's just one person, we're really not giving them anything. Above and beyond that. So like, John, to like your point, like if we're building on an additional 100 square foot essentially per caregiver in this situation where we have 2. So then would it be appropriate if we then said 600 square feet?
But
I don't think we should say anything. I think if it's in your house, you're limited by the state of Maine that you can only grow 500 square feet canopy. I think from that point on, it's what you want to do in your house. You can only sell so much. You're not going to have a 300-foot showroom. to
you're
sell.
not allowed a retail area, because that comes under a different ordinance, right? We already know that.
And I'm gonna go back to the whoopie pie thing, because we always go back to it. They just built a really nice big kitchen on their house to continue the business. We didn't look at that. I have a problem with telling somebody, hey, you can't use the basement of your house to set up an office, extraction, and where people come in to see you. I have a problem with that. They own that property. They're not doing anything illegal. How dare me tell them what they can do? That's just my view. I have a problem with that.
So to go the other way. it's pretty standard to have this verbiage in ordinance, so you should kind of piggyback what you're saying and like change the numbers, but I don't think you should cross it out of the entire ordinance.
But we don't, in no other home occupation do we designate how much space you're allowed to use. This is the only one.
So I'll just go back to our original charge, I think, to the planning board with this language was to address this particular issue around like the potential of having, I'll use the example, a gunk road happening in town. That was what the charge was to the planning board. That's why we're here today. If the entire council has a widely different opinion than that now, then I think we can take a step back. But if that is still our consensus, that that was the original direction and intention for the planning board, then that's what we need to be focused on and what we need to try to make sure we're building language into to prevent. So is there consensus from the council that that's still our direction?
Yes.
Me too. You guys?
Sure, but no.
As,
You can say no. I just.
Oh, I know you say no. I don't agree with this, so.
Okay, then your answer is no. All right, so we have a consensus from the board that that's the direction we want to head into. It seems like Jenny, if like that's our sort of the direction we want to head into, this covers us from that perspective.
Correct.
And is in line with other ordinances from other communities.
It is,
Okay,
yeah.
all right.
The 12.
have other communities regulated caregivers?
Yes.
Really?
I hope somebody sees this.
They're doing just fine. That is good.
But I would adjust the 500. I would look into that, maybe, and go 6.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then keep the other one at 12.
Okay. What do you guys think about that? Move from 5 to 600?
My preference is that it's taken away from us. It's in your
Okay.
seat now. You have what the board voted on and gave you. And that's what I would go with from the board's perspective. You know, we voted on it and met the charge that you gave us. Now it's in your hands. You change
Yep.
and do whatever you want. I'm not looking for a reopener on the planning board.
Your point of the 600 would basically be saying. It is one person, you're covering that extra 100. It's not talking about canopy in this. Is that?
Let's talk about
why-
everything, including canopy.
500 feet is plenty.
Yeah.
Okay, however, if you're gonna have 1,200 spelled out here, why not change that to 6 and give them an extra 100 feet? You know, and John James made a good point, they can do other things in that 100 square feet, 100 square feet, the, you know, decent size area for what you need
It's a
to,
10 by 10 room.
you know.
It's a small, it's not even the size of a bedroom, really.
It's 10 by 10.
You have to do extraction and production and have things, I mean, you're gonna max out 500 feet with the canopy, and then what are you gonna do with all the other stuff you have to do? Where are you supposed to do that?
Well, we're not talking about a commercial business, we're
It's
talking
not
about.
a commercial, it's a
know.
home business, but that doesn't mean you aren't, you're allowed to do it.
I think,
I think
making-
something else.
I think for the sake of like what you guys are saying, this is what was given to us. To make it more uniform, at least to do
Yeah.
the 600 and 1200 makes sense in my head. That's what I actually said. All right, it was 500. We should put it at 1,000. Not understanding. This conversation was good, so I think going to 6 and 12 is at least this.
Okay. All right, we're gonna stick with 6. We're gonna move on from square footage limitations. Any other questions or sort of explanation from the planning board on any of the stuff that we're looking for?
The order. That's in lockstep with what you're seeing elsewhere too, the odor mitigation part, section 2, E2 is. Right, all that stuff, I wrote, my note was overkill, question mark. If these are our neighbors doing this, is this overkill? I don't know what the pricing is, I don't know if it's.
So I think our point was, you can't have it affect people, but you don't have to put in a mitigate, you have to submit a plan. But you don't necessarily have to enact it or put in a mitigation unless there's a problem,
I got
but we
you,
want it on file, and if it's not clear, we should clarify that.
okay,
Because we all felt like you could have plopped your whatever, your house in the middle of 100 acres, and if you're not bothering everybody, why put in a filtration
Yeah,
system, right?
yeah.
So.
okay, no, I think that's good. Thank you.
We definitely have the hours of operation synced up with the licensing stuff. We talked about that before. So that's number one.
So what are we gonna do about hours of operation?
Well, I think we thought people would be coming before or after work, so we tried to make it somewhat, earlier. I think that you had 8 to 8 and we have 7:30 to 6, which is more. Like ending at 6 is a business, right?
No,
So I think
I work till 5:30, it's not.
on this topic, because this overlaps with the licensing portion that we're just frankly not gonna have time to address this evening. I think that's a topic that we can table and we can just be sure to adjust it here, because this is also addressed in the licensing piece. I have a lot of questions on the licensing piece, which I know is not for the planning board, but I think unfortunately, another workshop, I think, to just kind of like pick your brain and stuff around, because the licensing stuff largely came from you, right, Jenny?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I think just like getting some clarification on some of that stuff, and we can try to get into some of it this evening, if you guys want, or we can try to find another day. Okay, so we'll address hours of operations when we talk about licensing stuff, which is a council issue, not a planning board issue. Anything else on page 11? Okay. All right. So I think that covers us for performance standard. As far as like just the definitions go, because I mean, a lot of the definitions that are kind of interspersed throughout this whole thing, are a lot of these like pretty standard, what you guys have,
So
Proposed.
the only thing that the planning board proposed is what began on page 9. That we just touched on the medical cannabis caregiver home occupation.
okay,
On
okay.
my piece of paper, anything that's put in red on the definitions.
Mhm.
I would, going back, because I think a while back in one of the prior workshops. I think this issue was brought up. And at the time, I think you asked for the planner and CEO input into the ordinance. And I remember there were some changes because they wanted to see some definitions, which just from a practical perspective,
Mhm.
to put definitions into an ordinance, the definition doesn't hurt. But when someone comes in to talk to you,
Mhm.
it's got nothing to do with the planning board
Mhm.
right now.
Mhm.
But when someone comes in to talk to you, at least you know what they're talking about.
Yeah, yeah.
It helps you define if they're saying this, then you can say, oh, you're not talking about that, you're talking about this.
Mhm. Yeah, I think,
So I think they're good for moving forward,
For
but
sure.
that's your call. I mean, I don't know, Jenny, where
Where the
you got
definition
them.
came from,
Yeah.
right from the OCP
okay,
website.
that's what I
State of
figured.
Maine. Yeah,
Cool, okay.
And the only thing that I would suggest on the definition, just to note, is just make sure that they conform to what other adopted definitions that we have, with the growth and cultivation ordinance that we have, and then the caregiver storefront. Those are already defined, so make sure those definitions that are already defined in ordinance match that. That's it, just make sure we're.
and if you look on page 8 and you look, just to get back to the limitation thing,
Yep,
it actually spelled it out here in the definition.
Yeah.
It came from OCP. And
Okay.
it says the property, let's see, the property may not be utilized for commercial resale, no more than 500 designated square feet per licensed caregiver. Or where 2 registered caregivers are currently on within the same property, a maximum of 1,000 designated square feet of cumulative square foot is permitted for the entire home of operation. That's, we'll have to fix that to match the home op for that definition for caregivers.
so are they talking,
That's just canopy. If they just, that's what they mean that's how much canopy you're allowed.
that's not super clear to me that they're just talking about canopy there, so,
They're not, so
yeah.
we just need to make sure that what we write here matches
Yeah,
that.
100%. But,
Yeah.
thank you for bringing this up, because this, and this is directly from the state, so if the state is saying that it's 500 square feet total per caregiver, not 500 square feet of canopy, that's very different.
It is very different.
But that is what they mean is canopy. That's what it is. It's 500 square feet of canopy.
Mhm.
That is what they mean.
Right,
So-
that's typically what we're talking about.
It used to be a number of plants and they changed it
Mhm,
somewhere in the last 2 years, I think.
okay. All right, well, I think for the performance standards piece, I think we can call it, for the council, maybe we can try to find some time in the next, I mean, we have no like real urgency with this one, not to the same extent as we do with the moratorium, so well, obviously we, selfishly, I would just like to get this done, so we can be done with it, but we don't have like a super strict timeline, but I think it'd be good to have some time on the licensing piece to just, for the council to maybe sit down with Jenny and Pam to just like think through that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
At another date, not tonight.
Yeah, I mean, I have 15 minutes.
We're done. We've had a long day.
Yeah,
I started at 4, let's roll.
yeah, I'm good with calling it and kind of come to this with fresh minds. Thank you guys for coming in. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
all of your work on this. And let's put on the agenda for next week to set a workshop date for this. Okay. All right,
And then we need to get
Thanks.
a clarification on that, man.
yes.
Because if that's what the state says and they need 500 square feet total,